Hi everyone, welcome to the Jenkins Cloud Native Special Interest Group meeting. Today we will have a short sync up in order to talk about the ongoing projects and about the updates we had at a Cloud Native SIG meeting we had at Jenkins World Contributor Summit. So I'll screen share for a second in order to show the agenda. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, if you're interested, we have a Gitter chat. It's Jenkins CI/Cloud Native SIG. You can just join this chat and you can find all the links here, including participant link and also a link to the status document. So during the meeting, we will be making notes in this document and yeah, we'll update it accordingly. So today we have 3 items in the agenda. It's update about Cloud Native Jenkins and Special Interest Group. Then we will talk with Alex Norland about external configuration storage work and the current status. And then together with Carlos and Jesse, we will talk about Ephemeral Jenkins. It's a item we were presenting at Jenkins World, and I think it would be great to discuss it here and to get some feedback. If you want to propose any other topic, just add it to the agenda, and if we have time, we will cover them. Otherwise, we will schedule them to the next meeting. So today we have yeah, almost full room of participants. So we have JC, Carlos, Alex here. Also, there is David, Curry, Matthew. Yeah, I believe it's Yurik, right? And yeah, we also have Zach on the call. So, and yeah, if you're interested to watch, you can just join our YouTube channel. There is a broadcast going there. So if you're unable to join the room due to too many participants, you can just follow the meeting on YouTube. So that's it from me. Carlos, yeah, I believe you can just start and present Cloud Native SIG updates.
Yeah, so thanks, Oleg. Last week, let me share my video. Last week we had Jenkins World, where Kosuke announced at the keynote the Cloud Native SIG and efforts that we are working on, and we also got in his keynote. He also covered the 5 big projects we're working on. So I encourage people to watch the keynotes. I think they are live already. Projects we're working on. So I encourage people to watch the keynotes. I think they are live already. Projects we're working on.
Sorry, there is echo from somebody.
I just mute PC.
Okay.
And Oleg and Jesse gave an update during the Contributor Summit. I'm going to share those slides here, and we can quickly go through them.
Yeah, I'll put the link to the keynote.
Well, everybody here should know what the SIG is already and what we are trying to do. So let's go through the updates. We have also at the keynote the appearance of Google and Microsoft. So thank you for showing the support there. And they are part of the SIG, and they're working already on the artifact manager support for their respective blob stores, at least Azure is. So we'll be helping implement these features, and we are looking also for other active participants in the SIG to implement different versions, both for the artifact repository, external artifact management, and also for log storage. So
and I do have a task to split apart the Artifact Manager S3 plugin. I've not forgotten that.
You mean splitting it to 2 plugins?
Yes.
So, well, pluggable storage, obviously the goals is to remove everything that is in the Jenkins home, being artifacts and logs being like 90% typically of what the disk is used there. And that way making Jenkins more resilient and more scalable, and also faster to when you need to restart things. Okay. So we want it to be transparent with no configuration. So no need to archive your artifacts in different cloud providers. Just use the same pipelines for both, for whatever backend you're using, and obviously scalable using blob store services provided by the cloud. And we provide the APIs and reference implementation on S3 right now, so but people are welcome to include to create new implementations. So I guess the update here, the most interesting, is that I mean, we have the artifacts implemented, we have build logs partially implemented for CloudWatch logs. Configuration, there's some work in progress there. I think this is the XML replacement, right?
Yeah, we will talk about it later today.
Mm-hmm. Credentials using Kubernetes secrets, that there's the implementation that is already there and works well. There's also some ongoing work with test results and initial work with code coverage. And system logs, you can use Fluentd on a Kubernetes cluster to send all these logs into whatever backend supported by Fluentd. So that's a very long list of backends. Okay, we already talked about the artifact manager for S3 before. That's already available. It uses JClouds, but we've heard some people asking whether JClouds was a requirement, and it's definitely not. At the moment where we started this, we thought JClouds would be nice because it would allow people to build other implementations quickly. But given there's no support on JClouds for pre-signed URLs, and we use that for downloads of artifacts from the agents, and to also have links on the UI and some other places. We actually had to add extensions for JClouds and S3, and you would have to add extensions for other providers. So the JClouds finally was not as big of an advantage as we thought at the beginning. So it's definitely not something that it's, I mean, if we were to do it again today, probably would remove JClouds and just directly use the S3 API.
Yeah, I've also heard that there is ongoing work for Artifact Manager for Asia.
Yeah, there is. So
maybe PC could provide some status on this topic if she's interested. maybe later.
For the credentials, the API extension existed already for a long time, and the Kubernetes credentials provider implements that. That's something I mentioned, which also opens the door to use Kubernetes secrets, and in turn, Kubernetes secrets can be implemented in different ways, like using HashiCorp's Vault. So it's really cool that you can plug multiple credential providers through there too. There's also another implementation that we have at CloudBees for CyberArk. That's proprietary, but it gives you an idea that there's definitely room for multiple implementations. For the external configurations in XML, we are going to talk later, Alex, right?
Yes.
For test results, Oleg, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, maybe it's rather Jason.
Yeah, that's something I was working on. That's very much experimental at this point. Where I left off, it was able to successfully upload test results with with at least a reasonable level of detail to a SQL database as a first draft. And it could do that directly from the agent JVM without going through the master. And it would set the build status correctly, so the build would be marked unstable or appropriate and all of that. But I just started playing with having the classic UI and/or BlueOcean actually display those results again from the same data source.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jason. So, does BlueOcean already work? Maybe I missed it.
BlueOcean is, as far as I can tell, is calling the same internal APIs as the classic test result display. Mm-hmm. So that's not ready yet. I have a few method calls implemented successfully against SQL queries, but there's a lot more that would need to be implemented to actually replace the standard test storage.
Yes, and another problem we have with the story that effectively we target JUnit plugin and all plugins which implement JUnit plugins API. But yeah, it doesn't mean that all test related plugins will be integrated with this engine, at least in the beginning.
No, there's explicitly no support for Cucumber test results, which has a completely different format. Mm-hmm. That seems to be really the only widely used alternative test storage. As far as I can tell, the vast majority of people use JUnit plugin or something compatible with it as is. There are some plugins which add additional metadata, most notably the test attachments plugin. That's something that I think could be supported in this model. They haven't prototyped it yet.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Carlos. Oh, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, for the external build logging, what we are doing is we are making the agents stream their logs directly to the log storage, the log backend. And so the logs no longer go through the master. And that improves a lot the performance and the storage of data in the Jenkins master file directory. Also, yeah, they are not stored in the master at all. They are not even cached. The master, whenever you go to the log view of a job, it will directly go to the backend to fetch the logs. So there's no storage in the master at all. And for that, we have two implementations, one for Elasticsearch, one for AWS CloudWatch logs. And we had a first iteration using FluentD to send the logs to CloudWatch. And then we would fetch them directly from CloudWatch. But I believe now it's all direct to CloudWatch, writing directly to CloudWatch and reading directly from CloudWatch, right? Jesse?
I have a prototype rewrite that sends directly to CloudWatch. It needs some work because the way that the logs are organized currently doesn't line up with the expectations of how CloudWatch does sharding and that sort of thing. But I'm pretty confident it's possible. The main interesting bits to work on relate to the authentication using IAM, which is a little tricky because you want to create temporary credentials for agents to write to just a single log stream or whatever it turns out to be. And that's a little bit tricky, but I think I know how it can be done.
Yeah, we started with FluentD also because it supports all the like hundreds, I think, of plugins to different backends. The interesting part that it's not covered by FluentD, unfortunately, is how to get the logs from the backend. So you still need to have specific implementations to fetch the logs and display them in the UI or do anything else with them. So that's why FluentD may just go away, because to remove also the requirement of running FluentD in the cluster. For Elasticsearch, this uses Logstash, right?
Yes and no. So the first prototypes used Logstash, but even in this case, Logstash was pulling the data from Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch acts as a main database in this case. And yeah, currently we just push the data to Elasticsearch and pull it directly from it. So no Logstash involved right now. It's not a big deal. We had a prototype for Logstash plugin. So effectively, we could be able to send data to all Logstash implementations. But yeah, the problem there that a plugin would need a significant update. So for reference implementation, we decided to go with Elasticsearch only. Even in this case, yeah, we still need to land a lot of changes. So pipeline changes are still under review. We need them for both stories in order to deliver public releases. So now they're available for evaluation, but there is no releases in Update Center. And for Elasticsearch, we are also doing patches in Jenkins Core and the Elasticsearch API plugin. And in order to do that, yeah, we still need to finalize the changes and pass all reviews. So it's work in progress.
We'll say that the pipeline patches seem to be moving towards the last stages of review at this point.
Yeah.
And we have, the work we mentioned, it's started, or it will be started at some point, about code coverage and other types of reports that can be stored in some specific cloud backend. So Cloud Native Jenkins, well, one of the things, or the main, I guess, explanation that Kosuke posted in his blog, Jenkins Shifting Gears, that everybody interested in Jenkins development should read. Basically, I like the phrase that he mentioned is Jenkins has reached a local optimum, that there's improvements that can be made to go past this local optimum and make Jenkins even a better project. So there is going on. So there's Cloud Native Jenkins, which is like the end goal, how we would like to see Jenkins run on a cloud native architecture, on a Kubernetes cluster, and using the newest, the latest technologies, and using cloud services and being more like stateless and more modern and more, well, there's this idea behind how serverless things work. Pay for what you use, infinite scale, and be able to launch jobs whenever you need them, and do not pay anything if you don't have anything running. So scale down to 0. And the other project that is on the way there is this Jolt in Jenkins on how to improve Jenkins for existing users today and make the transition easier to the cloud native world. So cloud native is a CD engine that runs on Kubernetes and has a different architecture from Jenkins today. It uses microservices, for instance, for extensibility. And part of this SIG is we focus on the data, storing data on managed services, and also configuration as code, the configuration as code plugin.
And I believe that other topics will also appear in our agenda at some point.
Yeah.
So if somebody interested, yeah, we could expand the scope of discussions.
And we want it to be, we want to bring evergreen on board, so having an opinionated distribution that works for most of the users without any additional configuration, and based on what Jenkins X is building. So all these different services running that compose your Jenkins cluster or ecosystem and converge with what Jenkins X is offering today. So all these event handling, all these separate services for your Jenkins masters, agents running on Kubernetes, all these things for a Kubernetes-based deployment. And there is some work already being done where you can run Jenkins as like a serverless, and I'll do a demo later at the end of this call, and basically showing how you can receive events from GitHub, for instance, create a new Jenkins master on the fly that runs very fast, and your pipeline gets executed inside that ephemeral Jenkins, creates new agents, and stores all the data that it's needed later on into S3 and CloudWatch logs.
Yeah, so Jesse, you commented really, so yeah, maybe you have something to say about that?
I don't remember what that was about.
It was just yesterday. No worries.
Yeah, this is initial work, so we want to show it to get feedback and shape the direction where we're going. And let me quickly go through the next, because I don't want to take a lot more time with this. So we have single shot masters. We use configuration as code to instantiate the master. We use Jenkins File Runner, which is a project that allows you to start a master that runs a Jenkins file and then dies at the end. And custom-ware packager to build the Docker image that will execute this pipeline.
There is an article on Jenkins.io which describes how it's built and provides references to the implementation and some basic demos. And yeah, I believe that at the end of the call we could run a more complicated demo which we were presenting at the conference.
Yeah, so this is a combination of different projects. and there's other activities happening at the same time. There is Jenkins X work happening. There's improvements to Jenkins File Runner and things like that. So yeah, the rest I think it's just was for the conference, right? Yeah, we'll be planning more things to build this cloud native Jenkins, continue with the pluggable storage work, and align with Jenkins X and Evergreen. So we built a unified platform that runs this with these characteristics more like serverless Jenkins. So any questions? You can ask here in the Hangout if you are here, or you can ask in Gitter.
Yes, so far no questions in Gitter.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is
It would be a configuration storage sync up. Alex, are you ready?
Hello. I don't have any slide, and unfortunately there's a nasty cold going around the office, so I haven't really got that much time lately to work on things. But the current state is it's seemingly functional. I haven't managed to do any deep testing on it, but when I added a savable listener that syncs the file to disk, everything else seems to work as normal, which at least seems to suggest that everything is stored. There's a few areas where other plugins are relying on getting the actual file from the XML file. So just abstracting away XML file didn't really solve all of the problems. But it mostly seems to be limited to some plugins like the disk storage one. And not surprisingly, those would need to be patched.
Yeah, so JEP implies that we will have a kind of caching logic for API. So if you invoke XML file, get file, or something like that, you should be getting the file. But yeah, I guess our main problem is that some plugins just try to go to the file directly because they know where it's located.
Yeah. So right now I'm just doing the caching by having a savable listener that immediately writes the file. But well, that's only going to work with a single master. I've also rebased the old the Kubernetes one. I might not have pushed the latest version of it, but I rebased it so that it's using the same one as I'm currently experimenting with.
And the Kubify one?
Yes, that's one.
Yeah.
So the APIs aren't great, but at least I have a good way of testing the basic functionality of it right now.
So it already runs in Kubernetes with this? Or?
Well, I haven't tried the Kubernetes one. I just tried the naive SQL implementation. I didn't have access to a Kubernetes cluster up until recently, and it's been booked for internal things. So in a few weeks, that will free up, and I'm hoping to try it with our current Jenkins master to get, well, we have a lot of jobs, and it would be fun to see if something breaks.
Yeah, it would be cool to see the results. So if you don't mind, I'll share the screen, so I'll show some context about this story. Do you see it?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, we have configuration as code, sorry, not configuration as code, configuration storage JEP here. So it just puts the documentation and vision how it would look like. So currently this JEP is under review. So, Alex, if you have any comments about the implementation and what could be changed there, it will be much appreciated. So technically, you're more than welcome to just take over this job and adjust it to your current implementation.
I think it actually reflects the current implementation pretty well. Changes the XML file from being final and then extends that and deprecates some of the current ones. The rest of the API isn't fully defined yet. It's been mostly organically grown.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so the original version from Alex in April is this pull request, which is open against Jenkins code. But if I understand correctly, your current work is located elsewhere, right?
Yes, there's a current branch called Work in Progress. And I'm doing some rebasing, so I kept it out of the current pull request, not to generate a lot of notifications.
Yeah, just trying. So it's this one, Jenkins, and he's work in progress, right? This one. Yeah, thanks for the link. So do you currently use plugins, or do you target pluggable storage implementation as libraries? Because,
right now it's all in there, and I've started testing it and figured that I'll see how the approach works first, and then I'll do the packaging.
Okay. It's perfectly fine. It's nice to see that this story is going forward, and yeah, I believe that SQL implementation will be already something really interesting to people to try. At least I definitely want to try it. When we have Qubify, yes, it will be a huge addition to projects like Jenkins X, because yeah, they could use this implementation. And yeah, currently, do you need any help with this story? Review, testing, whatever feedback?
When I get a little bit further, I'm probably going to need some help with defining sane APIs. The current ones are not in a great state, and it's been, well, it's sort of the same APIs on different levels, and it's starting to get messy.
Yeah, so we can polish that. And yeah, in Jenkins, currently there is an opportunity to get better annotations to APIs. So this is a feature which was introduced by Jesse last spring. It allows to integrate some APIs to Jenkins code if needed, and to have opportunity to change it later. So for example, if you want to introduce configuration storage as beta thing, you could use that. So even if the APIs are messy, it's something we could start from. Yeah, restrict beta. Thanks, Jason. Okay, so that's great. Thanks for working on it, Alex. Any questions to Alex? Okay, no questions. So yeah, when you're ready to show a demo at some point, just let us know, so that I think it would be interesting to see together the venue eventually. Okay, and the last topic is a Ephemeral Jenkins idea. So Carlos has already started presenting this bit. Yeah, so effectively we have a blog post on Jenkins.io, which describes the ephemeral Jenkins master research. So this is a diagram which Carlos has already presented. So effectively, you can just create a Jenkins container or Kubernetes pod with all services, run them in a single shot, and then just terminate it after the build. And yeah, pluggable storage stories we are working on are here so that the data won't be lost. So this is a current proof of concept, and we already have some tooling used there. So yeah, of course, we use Docker. There is Jenkins file runner. This is a project originally started by KK. Now there is two forks. So this one is what we use now, but there is another one which is official one. It's Jenkins file runner. So this one, which we will need to adopt at some point, yeah. So far we use the previous one because it's a bit better from the performance standpoint, and yeah, to be honest, it's just the first implementation we've started using. Then there is configuration as code plugin. You can implement self-configuration for Jenkins instance here by just running JCask plugin or by running system Groovy scripts. So the instance starts with all your environment pre-configured. And in order to package this thing, we use Custom Word Packager. It's a recently created tool, also last spring. So it effectively allows to define inputs in a kind of YAML. And then it packages Jenkins, and you just get a ready-to-fly Word package or Docker image, and now Jenkins file runner image. And yeah, you just configure it by YAML, and you get configuration with everything. So this tool is what we use, and it's also used by Jenkins X team. So at the Jenkins World today announced some research work on Jenkins X 2.x, which would also include single-shot masters, and yeah, they use the same toolchain. So we have one demo available here. It's a kind of very, very simple demo which just shows how it's integrated all together. So Jenkins file runner, you can just check out this repository and get the thing running. You just pass a Jenkins file and it executes. Pretty simple. Carlos has a more complex demo which includes pluggable storage stories. So, Carlos, if you're ready, you could just present this demo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what we have here is several things, right? We have a Jenkins file. Is the one?
Yeah, just something wrong with your scrolling, maybe.
I was playing with it, so.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just stash.
Yeah, I just don't know what things I needed to change. So we have a Jenkins file that uses a Kubernetes plugin and defines a container. Well, it defines the GNLP container. We need a special one for now that doesn't try to connect through HTTP, because when this serverless Jenkins runs, Jenkins master runs, there's no HTTP created open port. And then we use a Maven container just to run whatever Maven we want in there. And on the actual meat of the Jenkins file, what we say is, okay, go into the Maven now, into the Maven control this code, use credentials that are stored as a secret in Kubernetes. And inside the Maven container, just do a Maven build and archive the artifacts. And this is going to send the artifacts into S3. So that's a normal Jenkins file with some bits and pieces that we needed to adapt for now, but that would be a normal Jenkins file that you can run on this serverless or ephemeral Jenkins. So we have a make file here that does a few things like creating secrets and copying the Jenkins file into Kubernetes as a config map. These other two things are for debugging only. We can increase at runtime both the login levels and change the config as code configuration. We import our GitHub secret, and then we apply our demo Kubernetes configuration. And that's the most interesting piece. So what this creates is a Kubernetes job that runs a specific service account in Kubernetes and has a container, which is the Jenkins file runner. This image is built by the custom word packager, so it has all the plugins needed, and also configuration as code and everything you want to bundle in your Jenkins master. We can pass some system properties. This is just to optimize for a faster startup time and setting the agent port and small things like that.
Yeah, generally, you can set these properties in custom word packager as well if you need to simplify this config.
Mm-hmm. And we are mounting the Jenkins file into a workspace, so this container, this Jenkins master has access to the Jenkins file. We are also mounting the config as code and lot of properties for debugging if we want to change them at runtime. But that's all. We expose a service just to expose the agent port for the Kubernetes plugin pod to connect back to the master. And then the rest is just permissions. So Jenkins service account that has permissions to do a bunch of things. Everything, this all comes from the Kubernetes plugin for Jenkins, that all the permissions needed to create pods, to list pods, and things like that. So if I run my Kubernetes, just to clean up everything and start from scratch, there was nothing in there. And after this runs, now we get the service that listens for the agent port, for the agents to connect, and a Kubernetes job. And once this Kubernetes job launches a pod, which already did, this pod is a Jenkins master that will read the Jenkins file and start executing it. And this will get the logs. So what you see here are the logs from your job, basically. This is just a normal job execution log. So it's going through the node and it's waiting for the agent to connect, and it's gonna do the whole thing. So, okay, the slave is being created. So we have now a master pod and an agent pod. And the agent pod is now running. And we see here that the agent is provisioned. And now it's just doing the git clone using the credentials provided by the Kubernetes secret. And it's just running a Maven build, like downloading everything from the internet. And obviously, in a real world, you would have a local registry that you can use. It built this jar file, and it's archiving the artifacts and uploaded one artifact to S3. So, and we see here that both the agent was terminated and the master was completed. So now we don't have anything running. Both pods are completed, and the job is successful, so it's done. If we go and look at the results in S3, yeah, we have the jar file that was just uploaded 1 minute ago. So this is stored in S3. And if we go to CloudWatch, we can see Jenkins file runner log output. So everything we saw there is there. So everything we saw in the standard output goes into CloudWatch. So it's this git clone, pipeline, downloading things from Maven, all that comes here. And this comes from the standard Kubernetes Fluentd deployment that will send all the standard output from your containers into CloudWatch. And this works, this applies to multiple Kubernetes clouds and different backends in different cloud providers. So that's it. If anybody has questions.
Yes, so about log storage, how does it pass annotations now?
For this mode, it does not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is just the standard output.
Yeah, this is stripping all Jenkins console nodes.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the standard output message here. This one, and then you get different metadata like what container was running and what namespace, what was the pod name, pod ID, labels of the pod, things like that. But this is just a standard output.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for Jenkins file runner, what it sends to standard output is the annotation script version of the build log. So that's lost permanently. If you care about that, the actual CloudWatch logs plugin that sends directly to CloudWatch from the Jenkins process itself does keep the annotations in a separate metadata field.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's kind of useless because you can't interpret them without a running Jenkins service. In fact, without the particular running Jenkins service, which is gone as soon as the build completes, because it's not just base64 encoded and serialized. It's also encrypted with a key which was only present in that container. So unless we do some extra work to process those annotations into something like a JSON equivalent or something like that, we could potentially keep them, but right now it's not really possible.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, technically we have everything embedded, but yeah, our problem with it, some data is not being sent. So for example, if you publish JUnit results, now they do not go to the remote storage. So we would need test storage to be finished. Same for pretty much every other storage story. Maybe the work being done by Alex could simplify it and help in some cases for XML-based storages, but yeah. So far, some data. So far, we just rely on special plugins and on std out. So if you use special plugin, for example, to send the data to test link, then you get the data already, but you don't get it by invoking the JUnit plugin now. So yeah, there are a lot of things to do ahead. But yeah, anyway, it seems to be a nice prototype which shows how it could run. So, any comments about this story?
I have just a question from my side. So we talk about the build stored into a persistent store. We talk about logs probably going to CloudWatch or Elasticsearch. But what about the builds who are in queue? So some items which are stored in memory for the moment. Do we need? Do you think we need to persist them as well?
There is no queue in this mode.
Sorry, what did you say?
There is nothing in queue.
Well, I mean when your build is not yet in the executor, and then it's just in the queue in the memory, you know. So if those
that doesn't happen here. So as soon as the responsibility for scheduling these would probably go to something like Prow, so a separate service that has its own mechanisms for deciding, how to handle webhooks and when to schedule things. But as soon as this Kubernetes batch job starts, that is your build. So there is no Jenkins queue involved here. Yeah.
So if you open this speaker blog post, so there is event handler, which triggers this pod. It may be CLI also if needed. So yeah, this is just a container which executes everything internally. But yeah, this is how the things would work for single shot masters.
Okay, I can see why you say there is nothing in the queue since you execute it directly in your Kubernetes. And what about if you want to use an external agent because you don't want to have to create, for example, some Docker image inside your Kubernetes? You'd like to have this. When you create like Docker builds, you want to have this to an external pod because you would like to reuse some old Docker image. So in this case, if this slave is already, I don't know, busy, it should reach a queue, isn't it?
So what would happen here is if once the job is created in Kubernetes, if for whatever reason this fails, the pod fails, Kubernetes will schedule a new one. So the job will continue to run if whatever, a node dies for any reason. So that's why there's no need to persist anything. Kubernetes will manage it's basically once you create the job, this is in the Kubernetes queue to launch a pod that fulfills that job. What about external agents? So if you say, I want in this Jenkins file, I want a node with this label, which obviously doesn't exist if you don't use the Kubernetes plugin and it's not going to be created. This pod will basically hang and wait for your pipeline is going to be waiting for a node to fulfill that label. Because the master is exposed, the agent, as I mentioned, in a service, Kubernetes service, you could connect external agents to that service. You would have to figure out, how to do the routing from your existing agent into Kubernetes, but you could connect things externally.
Yeah, I think we just say that there is no such thing as a external agent. If you want to define configuration for this pod so that it's able to use, say, SSH agents, plugin to, you know, log into some server and use that as an agent, that's fine. But that, again, that doesn't involve there being a Jenkins queue. As soon as the build requests that it do that, it's going to run that SSH connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
the whole notion of a static agent out there somewhere that is then managed by Jenkins and allocated between different jobs, I don't think, or between different builds, I don't think that's really compatible with this mode of operation at all.
You could start an agent that connects to this pod from the outside. It's just that the timing, I mean, whenever you launch the pod, then or Kubernetes launches the pod, then you have to go and do something for this agent to connect to that pod.
Yeah, right. I think that for a single shot master, it's not a big problem because, yeah, there are lots of ways to connect a remote agent. It may be SSH agents plugin, it may be remote in Kafka plugin or whatever. The real problem starts when you have multiple single shot masters, because obviously current Jenkins architecture doesn't synchronize access to agents from multiple masters. And you would need to find implementation which somehow orchestrates it externally. So it could be another cloud API, for example, something like SunGrid Engine plugin. Probably it's a better example if you talk about cloud native Jenkins. But yeah, you would need to still provision the agent, and then yeah, you would get a kind of queue of requests to retrieve these agents. But yeah, I think it's outside the scope for cloud native Jenkins MVP, at least.
Yeah, I think we can just say that if for whatever reason the kind of agent that you want to run physically cannot be run in your Kubernetes cluster, then that's just not something we support in this mode. You can continue to use service mode Jenkins for those jobs.
Okay, clarifies. Thanks, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll put some notes to the document later. So technically you can do it. Practically, yeah, it's not something we would expect to be popular in cloud native Jenkins installations. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, there are some comments from Nicola about XML file. I believe if Nicola is not on the call, we can just take it offline. So, anything else to discuss today?
Let's wrap it up then. If anybody is going to Nice or Jenkins World, DevOps World?
I'm going.
I'd love to, but in Cambodia this time.
Yeah, I guess we will have a Cloud Native Jenkins update at the Contributor Summit in Nice. So there will be Contributor Summit, which is quite similar to what we had in the United States. The final agenda is to be announced, but yeah, I believe that there will be some Cloud Native Jenkins discussions. So if you're going to the conference, make sure you also join the Contributor Summit. It will be happening in parallel with workshops on October 23rd. Okay, and I guess we'll also need to discuss the next meeting. Do we need it? And if yes, when?
I'm going to be on vacation the next 2 weeks. It's going to be hard for me to join before Jenkins World.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe through Jenkins World, but let's just sync on an email.
Yeah, my case, I will be also on vacation, and then I'm going to JSOC Mentor Summit. So yeah, I believe that if somebody else wants to organize the meeting and present something, let us know. So we can help to get this meeting organized, but it's generally agenda-driven. So any cloud native SIG related topic is something we are more than welcome for discussion. And if you want to present something, you can just go to our mailing list and propose that. So just a second, I'll share my screen again. So on Jenkins.io site, there is Jenkins.io 6, and here's a Cloud Native Jenkins, and here's a mailing list link. So you just click this link, and here all discussions we have in the SIG now. So if you want to discuss something, propose anything, provide feedback about what you've heard today or about what you've heard before about Cloud Native Jenkins, just drop an email here and we will answer that. And we will be happy to schedule any discussions on demand. And I guess that's it. So I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thanks to everybody who participated in the meeting or who watched the meeting in YouTube. If you have any questions, yes, mailing list or Gitter chat, and we will be able to discuss the topics then.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. I'm stopping the broadcast.